Hello and welcome to another episode of the Music History Project. Today is all about the blues. And as a special treat, we have our special guest, Wolf, in-house with us.
A pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Welcome to the Music History Project. We're your hosts. I'm Mike Mullins.
Dan Del Fiorentino.
And Michelle Shedler.
All of our content comes from the Oral History Program, which is sponsored by NAM, the National Association of Music Merchants. And that is a collection that is over 3,500 interviews and constantly growing. If you want to check out any of our content or any of our other interviews that aren't featured today, please check out our website at www.nam.org/library.
Okay, that was Arthur Lee Williams playing the harmonica in his front stoop in St. Louis when I got the wonderful opportunity to interview him. What an amazing guy. It's kind of funny. When I started doing interviews, I always thought the quintessential blues interview would be a guy playing in his front stoop, and there it happened. Hey, this is Dan, and I'm so glad to have Mike with me again. Mike.
Hello.
And our newbie, your second podcast, Michelle, welcome to the team.
Hi, happy to be here.
And what a personal thrill it is to have our special guest, my dear friend and neighbor, Wolf Marshall. Thanks for coming.
Hello, y'all. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
One of the thoughts of today is all about the blues, and we're so happy to get Wolf's perspective on that. We get to share some of our favorite interviews from the NAMM Oral History Program. And Mike, I wonder if you could run down some of the folks we're going to be hearing from today.
Yeah, we definitely have quite the stacked podcast today. We're going to be hearing from some of the greats in blues, such as Quincy Jones, B.B. King, John Mayall, John D. Holeman. We already heard from Arthur Lee Williams, and we will be hearing from him again. Let's see, Robert Cray, Alan Toussaint, and that looks like it.
Awesome. A lot of great people, a lot of great fun. I'm glad you guys could join us. I thought maybe a good place to start was a short discussion on really what the blues are all about. I mean, to me, it's all about expression musically. Wolf, how do you explain it?
I consider it, like jazz, to be an improvisatory art form. But it's the intersection of discipline and spirituality, meaning that what you've got inside of you, your spirit, comes out through the discipline of the music. Like usually in the blues, it's a 12-bar form or something comparable in order to get the sound of the music, technically. But then it's how each artist imbues his spirit into that kind of a little bit what I call rigid form. So to me, it transcends the form at that point.
Absolutely. Well said. And the folks we're going to be hearing from today all sort of define that concept, in
Definitely.
my opinion. So, Michelle, tell us a little bit about where we're going to start.
Sure. We have the opportunity to start with just some of these amazing, inspirational people's first instruments and how they actually got into their careers and their love for music.
So first up, let's hear from Quincy Jones talking about how he found the piano, and then B.B. King talking about his guitar and first amp.
While in Bremerton, we were working at an armory there. That was like our recreation center next to the Army camp. This was during the World War II. And we had this armory where was our recreation center, but we had everything covered because we were baby gangsters, man. We had all the stores. We worked at them. Nobody could get away with nothing. We controlled all of it, 11 years old. And we broke in the army. We heard some lemon meringue pie was coming in with 3 different kinds of ice cream, so we were all on top of that. 11:30, when they hit it, we were in there at midnight, half hour later, eating up all of the pie and ice cream. Then we had a pie fight after we ate it up. Then we individually went around to the offices and broke in. And I broke in Mrs. Ayers' office, which was a superintendent, and it had a spinet piano in it. And I almost closed the door, and something said, "Idiot, go back in that room." I went back in the room and touched that piano, and every cell in my body said, "That's what you do the rest of your life." And I probably would be in prison or dead if I hadn't done that. And so I turned from gangster to musician, and I was in
11.
Yeah, 11 years old.
You know, one of the things that we're fascinated about is the instrument and the evolution of the instrument. You've played a big role in that too, as an endorsee and the different things that you've come up with over the years. I wonder if I could just ask you a little bit about that. What do you remember the first amplifier that you
yeah,
had?
very well.
Tell me about it.
The first amplifier I had, I bought it in Memphis at a music store called OK Hawk. That was 1949. Yeah, for sure, I remember. I remember it very well. I guess the speaker might have been 10 inches, maybe 8 or 10 inches. And it had only one speaker, and it was about so big. At that time, I wasn't as big as I am now, so I could sit on it. It was well built. But it was a Gibson amp, and I had a little black Gibson guitar, the first one that was named Lucille. And I didn't have, the guitar was amplified by a pickup. It wasn't made as an electric guitar, but they had this pickup called a D-arm. I believe it was D-arm was the name of the company that made it. And you put that on, it had one knob on it, and that one knob was just to turn the volume up and lower it. And that was my first one. And I remember it like it was yesterday, yes.
Did you play differently after you got the amp, do you think?
I'm glad you think on that, yes. I thought that made me much better.
Boy, I remember well sitting toe-to-toe with B.B. King there. That was at Humphreys down in San Diego. What an amazing experience that was for me personally, and I'm just so honored and delighted that we now have an interview of him in the NAMM Oral History program. Fantastic guy, as you can tell. And he illuminated a really interesting fact that because NAMM also represents the music retail, I got to learn a little bit more about this store called OK Hawk, which was a prim and proper piano store up front, but the owner's son was into rock and roll and had a little back door where he would have musicians come back and pick up their instruments. And I know, as we heard from B.B. King, that's where he got his amplifier. I know Ike Turner got one of his first Fenders there, and our dear friend Scotty Moore, who later went with Elvis, got his first guitar there. So kind of a hubbub there happening there in Memphis. So I'd love to hear, Wolf, your thoughts about listening to BB there.
Well, as I listened to him, I realized that guitar he was talking about was considered very low-tech at the time, including the Diarmid pickup, which clamped on with a couple of thumb screws on the strings and had one single knob. And today that would be almost unheard of in the blues, to play with such minimal gear. And as well as the tiny amp that would be like a shoebox size by comparison. And yet he got his sound out of it. His spiritual sound came out through that very minimal equipment. Like I said, be considered low tech. But it's all about making the strings sing, which is his actual signature. He makes it sound like a human voice. So the guitar's nature is to die very quickly. It's a very short time span. It has a very short decay. And it does not sustain. So the electric guitar, the amplifier, helped him to create his sound.
Absolutely. So where are we going to go next?
We heard from Quincy Jones and B.B. King. We're going to get a little bit of information about John Mayall and how he modifies his guitars, as well as John D. Holeman and his very creative way of expressing his music.
Well, I was trained in art, so it's just a natural flow through that I like to design. I've designed most of the album covers, and guitars and so forth.
Is there a particular thing you're going for? Is it just aesthetic, or is there a particular sound that you're looking to get out of it?
No. Instruments are there. Sound comes from what people want to put into it.
I made me a guitar before I bought one out of a cigar box. I went to the store, the man, had a loose cigar. I told him when he, finished the cigar out, save me the box. So he did. On one side of it, one side stay swinging. I'm sure you all see that. I glued it back together, cut me a hole in the center, run me a board across there for a neck, trimmed it out, made that myself. Wished I had it now, but I don't know what, even a splinter of it at.
What did you use for strings?
Pull the string wire out of a string door. They got the old vinyl now, but the string, I just take a big particular, I pull them out of the string door, set them across there. I got a sound from it.
That's fantastic.
I had to get it the hard way.
I'll say.
Yeah. Sure did.
What great stories.
Yeah.
If you're motivated, you're going to make a guitar out of a cigar box and a screen door. That was great. That was John D. Holeman. And before that was John Mayall, and I just wanted to do a little shout out to the gentleman who was conducting that interview, our late dear friend Eric Glassnap. So back to John D. I mean, what an amazing guy, and being really one of the very last of the pipe mouth blues players in the United States out there in South Carolina. That finger picking style with the thumb doing the bass notes has been such an influence on so many other people, and what a delight it was to give him some recognition for that. And I think one of the things that makes me really appreciate the oral history program at NAMM is it does exactly that. By including some legends and some people who have been our founders of the industry, we're able to pay back a little bit by acknowledging and recognizing their contributions. Any thoughts you had during those segments, Wolf?
Actually, a couple. If you look at the cover of Diary of a Band, John Mayall's live album with Mick Taylor on it, it's a 2-volume set, you'll see the guitar he's talking about. He's holding it. It's a very unusual instrument. It's got a shape like no other guitar. Looks almost like a rounded off rectangle. And it's very strange looking. There's no other shape like that. He obviously created that. And it's got designs all over it and 4 little pickups squashed together. So you didn't really hear him play guitar in the early days, so you weren't even aware that he had a guitar. It's like the original album was live at Kluk's Cleek, and he had a different guy. He played most of the keyboards.
Okay.
With Eric Clapton, he didn't play any guitar.
Right.
So you didn't hear it until the Peter Green album, which is the 3rd album down the line, and then you finally saw the guitar, the 5th or 6th album. And you can see it's covered with his designs and his artistic nature, the way he painted it. And also, as a side, just a passing aside, Albert King also fashioned a guitar early on in his life out of a cigar box and some humble materials.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great stories.
And I feel like nowadays cigar boxes are kind of on the rise again. They have like the kits where you can make your own cigar box, like
that's a good
for
point.
fun and stuff. It's like it started out as like a necessity for these guys that couldn't get a real guitar, and now people are doing it by choice. It's just kind of a funny way how that came back around.
I think we all did it. I remember when I was 13 in wood shop and making a guitar out of a plastic body and then putting it together in wood shop with little rivets and stuff. Looked like a Fender Jaguar at the time. I still have the body. I have no idea what happened to the neck.
Fantastic stuff. Any other thoughts, Mike or Michelle, about these guys we're listening to? What comes to your mind, Michelle?
So, I mean, I'm going to go like way back though. I was thinking nobody made a comment about Quincy Jones and how he like broke into this office and that started the like most amazing career. Like he's right up there with, I believe he's in the top 10 of Grammy winners.
Oh, yeah.
And it all started with him, after a pie fight, touching a piano that he just happened to, quote unquote, find. So I just think that was such an amazing story how he got started.
I love this line about, I could have been a gangster. It reminded me of Red Holloway, who I interviewed. He looked right at me and said, if it wasn't for music, I might be robbing your house right now.
And Eddie Van Halen had a little variation on that, said if it wasn't for the guitar, I'd probably be pumping gas in the valley.
It saved us all.
And one little thing also reminds me of a story. When he said he touched the piano, he had immediately the connection. Well, when Pat Martino was like a toddler, he touched his dad's guitar and actually cut his fingers on the strings, and he felt a connection at that time as a toddler with that instrument. When he cut his fingers, his dad put that guitar away permanently under the bed, and he wasn't allowed to touch it, but he had this immediate attraction to it. Something happens when you first touch an instrument that's destiny.
No doubt about it. Yeah, I totally agree, Wolf. That's neat. So, Michelle, you've done such a great job putting all this together. We just finished our segment on first instruments. What is the next segment of the podcast?
Inspirations. I mean, all of these people are so inspirational just themselves. So it's really interesting to hear who inspires them.
So we're going to hear from 3 big names and the inspirations behind them. First up, John Mayall, then Robert Cray, followed by B.B. King. And this segment is just great because it shows the legends talking about the legends in their eyes, which is really cool.
Absolutely.
So let's hear from the guys.
And what kind of music were you playing at that time?
Blues.
Any particular artists that you were particularly attached to?
No, I'd listen. I was 30 years old. I had a lifetime of listening to blues and jazz.
And what were some of your main influences?
There's too many. I never answer that question because it's misleading. People think, he used to like blah, 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 but there's so many of them, they all become a collective whole.
Well, Robert, thanks for taking some time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
One of the things that is very clear about your career in music is your passion for music. And I wonder if we could talk a little bit about how that developed in your life. Did you have music in your house when you were a kid?
We had lots of music in our house when I was growing up. We had, my parents, they didn't play per se, but they played a lot of records, And we had music from Ray Charles to Sarah Vaughan to B.B. King to Jackie Wilson to Bobby Blue Bland to Sam Cooke. And on Sundays, my dad would listen to gospel music. And so that included groups like the Dixie Hummingbirds, the Swan Silvertones, Five Blind Boys from Mississippi and Alabama and all that kind of stuff. So music was always around. And my dad was in the Army. And so in the early 60s, we got stationed in Munich, Germany. And in the early 60s, being on the military base there, what we did for entertainment was to listen to records. And so it was through those 2.5 years of being stationed there where we would listen to Armed Forces Radio Network or the records that we had, And we bought a lot of records at the PX, And I remember buying my first record that I wanted to get personally, which was a song called A Little Bit of Soap by the Jarmels, And it was great. I mean, my parents bought a nice big Grundig, stereo, big system, with the record player. It had the spindle for the 45s and the AM, FM, not FM, but just shortwave radio and the tape deck and all that stuff. So we listened to music all the time. It was great.
What have been some of the inspirational things for you coming up playing music? Have there been an individual person as a mentor or?
There have been so many, sir. I don't think we have enough time to talk about them, but there are 5 that stays with me all the time. I got them on my MP3. I was just listening to one a few minutes ago before you came in. There was a guy out of Mississippi, and it's been said that more blues singers came out of Mississippi Delta than any place else. I don't think this guy was actually from the Delta, but his name was Lonnie Johnson. Not Robert Johnson, Lonnie Johnson. I think Robert was good, but Lonnie was my favorite. And then there's a guy out of Texas called, his name was Lemon Jefferson. Born blind, I hear, and everybody called him Blind Lemon. That's the second one. And both of them played acoustic guitars. And where I lived, we never had electricity until I was about almost 17 years old before we ever had electricity in the house. We always had these kerosene lamps, and when I was a small boy, they'd talk about all the ghost stories and everything, and as soon as they make me go to my room, they cut it out. It kept me scared all the time. Now here I'm 80 years old, and just about I'll be 80 next month, so I never got over that. But anyway, those two guys was great at playing the acoustic guitar. But then I like jazz. There was a guy called Charlie Christian. I talk about him a lot because the great jazz musician Benny Goodman was one of the first to integrate a band, and he integrated it with Charlie Christian. And a Frenchman from France, they called him a French gypsy. His name was Django Reinhardt. And the fifth one is a guy that was from Texas, played electric guitar, single string electric blues, they said. The name was T-Bone Walker. So those are the five that I have loved all of my life. Could never play like any of them. There was times when I'd get mad at the guitar, and then all of a sudden I'd think, it's not the guitar, but it's you.
Wolf, what are some of your thoughts about those guys that BB was talking about? Amazing list of musicians, for sure.
And really, it's like a template for any guitarist wanting to know about BB's footprints, where he came from. Those five are essential. Lonnie Johnson was the first guitarist to incorporate the urban sound, whereas Blind Lemon stayed within the country sound. So a lot of Lonnie Johnson stuff went into the jazz vein. He did duets with Eddie Lang, who was Bing Crosby's guitarist, and it was in the jazz world. First duos of jazz guitar. And he was a blues guitarist. So he was crossing over back at that point. And Blind Lemon, like I said, is a very renowned country blues artist. Then Charlie Christian, of course, as everyone knows his reputation as being really the first electric guitar of prominent importance. And interestingly, he and T-Bone Walker were buddies. They used to play on a street corner, and Charlie would play the bass, T-Bone would play the guitar, and then they'd swap. They both took lessons from the same guitar player at one point. And so they come off of that tradition together. Like I said, he was the innovator electric guitar in jazz, and, of course, T-Bone in blues. A lot of BB's style comes off the way T-Bone plays, the way he's playing the single note thing, more so than the chordal thing of country. And then you've got finally Django, who is always considered the virtuoso. And so that he's a jazz swing artist from Europe. And so he started the gypsy jazz phenomenon that still goes on today in festivals all over Europe and the world. So
now, a lot of people might not know his finger styling was very unique. I wonder if you could talk just a little bit about Django's style.
Well, he had a horrible accident at one point in his life, and his fingers of his left hand were fused together due to a fire that took place in a gypsy camp inside of his wagon, and it fused the skin of his fingers together. So he only had the use of two fingers. You can see it in pictures where they're frozen in a sort of position. And so he played largely with two fingers and yet played very virtuosic music all over the fingerboard. He wasn't stuck playing across the neck. He would move all the way up and down the strings using two fingers like a little spider. So it's really amazing. He transcended his incapacity. And, you know, there's many artists who have done that, but to me, he's the most profound in the guitar. Anytime I have a student complaining, I can't play this, I say, think of Django Reinhardt.
That'll shut it out. That's really, really cool. And another comment towards the end there I thought was neat is that BB said he could not play it like any of them. Yeah. And, of course, that's a good thing for all of us, right? He developed his own style.
Exactly. Tell
me what your views on BB's style is.
It's interesting because BB is a real guitar fan. If I could tell you just a personal story, last time I played with B.B. King, we did a concert together at Royce Hall, UCLA, about 10 years ago. And anyway, it was for Kenny Burrell's 80th birthday. So after the concert, he said, "Don't be surprised if one day I'm going to take a lesson with you." Of course, he never did because he passed shortly after that. But the idea is he was a guitar fan. He wanted to learn what everybody else was doing and how he could maybe improve his game. And as far as the Charlie Christian thing, where he sort of had this disparaging remark about his own playing, if you listen to the track, Ain't That Just Like a Woman, he's actually working some of those Charlie Christian licks into his soloing, which is an instrumental.
No doubt. Yeah, that is really cool. Very, very neat. And, just as a little shout out, there's one of the things that I was sort of picking up on listening to all three of these guys, in particular Robert Cray, is accessibility. Whatever song he heard is what influenced him. And if he saved up his money, he could go down to the record shop and buy that one record. And that was a major influence on him. I always wonder, well, if it was a week earlier, it would have been a different song perhaps. Point being is influence is so important. So for any young musician who's out there, I think all of us here would agree, expose yourself, figure it out, get out. I mean, nowadays it's so much easier to have access to different styles of music. And the five guys that BB talked about are all accessible online to go in, check them out, figure out how they're a little different, and maybe get influenced, glean something from them that you can apply in your own style.
If you incorporated even 1/20th of each of those guys, you'd end up with a very original style.
Well said. Yep.
I thought it was interesting what John Mayall said as well, even though it was a short and concise answer. I like that he said that he never answers that question just because he doesn't want to give off wrong ideas, because I'm sure plenty of people have inspirations from artists that do not reflect their sound at all, and it's just kind of a minor influence, or it's something that you listen to and then created your own style. So I think even though it was a short clip and he just basically didn't answer the question, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I remember you reminded me, Mike, that the early pioneer of rock and roll, Lloyd Price, once said, in fact, during his NAMM interview, that for the longest time when people would ask him that question, he would only answer to people that he thought were relatable to his own style, just because it was too left field to say, well, I'm a rock and roller, but I was influenced by a jazz musician. I mean, it's a lot more common now, but just imagine back then, it wasn't really considered something that you bragged about, because that's not the style of music that you play. But in fact, all of these guys and so many musicians that we know are influenced from classical music and jazz, no matter what they're playing. And I think that's an important aspect to keep in mind for young people playing, is that expose yourself to all styles of music, I think is the best way to go.
Yeah, even the most original band in history, the Beatles, if you listen to early records, a lot of actual 12-bar blues. Kansas City, the stuff that Dizzy Miss Lizzy, Bad Boy, and even some of the tunes they wrote, like Can't Buy Me Love, are based on the blues.
Well said. Very cool. So, Michelle, tell us a little bit about our next segment.
So the next segment is just how everybody kind of creates their own music and their own sound. And we have two different perspectives here. One is pretty instantaneous, inspiration hit them pretty hard, and that was that. And then the other one is just having to work a little bit harder to kind of get to where he wants to go. So you're about to hear Alan Toussaint and Quincy Jones.
I wrote my first little duet when I was 12. It was a very humble little duet, trombone and trumpet. I just thought that would be really pretty. And it was pretty simple, I'll tell you that. Well, that happened maybe a couple of years earlier. I know that I wrote my first song with lyrics when I was 12. Yes, it wasn't much of a song at all, but I do know that I was 12 when that happened.
And what have you found that process to mean to you?
Which process?
The process of writing music.
The process of writing is you're imitating God. You're creating a world according to you. You can make the outcome any way you want to. Don't care how mean she left. In your song, you can bring her back, whether she likes it or not. Even though we don't take all the liberties we can, sometimes we go further than we should. But again, I say it's like playing God, especially arranging Because when you first begin to put the pen to paper, all the things that you're thinking should happen, no one knows it but you. And as you begin to write it, just like writing a letter that various people are supposed to read and do their part in it, then when you get to the place where the musicians are, and you bring down the downbeat and you hear for the first time, and the whole planet hear for the first time what you had in mind that you put on paper. That's a pretty, in a way, it's a kind of cocky feeling, modestly so, because music keeps us humble. But it is something to think that what wasn't a moment ago now is. And that's a reality. And with the technology, now it's forever. Well, as long as we have certain energetic resources. I don't know if I got far from your question.
No, are you kidding? I'm loving every sentence you say. This is fantastic. I appreciate what you have done as a musician and as a songwriter so much that hearing you express yourself in words is quite meaningful to me. So
Thank you.
I greatly appreciate that.
Inspiration. And I say that because as songwriters, we would prefer writing always from sheer inspiration. But with a world that we're moving in, at the pace things are going, and how fast jets can get to England and all, and we're involved in this machine that we can't afford to just wait around for the clouds to open up and give us something, which I'm glad to say it still does. But we need more than that cloud feel like rendering. So you can write, after a while you can write from your reservoir of stuff you've collected because you know the process of writing. Like if you wanted a song right now about that pillar, I could do that. And sometime I'll even look at it and want to do that. Or if it's time to write, I'm going to do that. So there are different processes of writing. A good analogy is Southern Nights is not one of those that I wrote because I knew anything. I just shared a certain part of my life, and I spoke in a melodic line, but I wasn't trying to actually make a song out of my repertoire, at least out of my reservoir of know-how. Chorus, verse, a bridge, tension, release, and then take them out. That can be thought, and is done a lot. But Southern Nights was a totally inspirational song that I just reported as it hovered over me and told me what to say. Saying, don't you remember? Say this and say that. And in a very comforting way. Other times, I collect scraps all the time, everywhere I am, if I'm walking anywhere, because there's so much going on. And if I see something happening on the corner, if I get back to the car, I may have a little piece of paper, something to say what I saw and how I felt about what I saw. Because sometimes you'll make a note of something and you make your note too short, and you think you're going to remember this forever, and this note won't mean anything in 3 weeks. So I even write about how I felt about what I saw, and if it's to be anything, and I revisit it maybe later that evening when I've collected enough feathers and wishbones, I try to make a chicken out of it. And sometimes I'll look back at it and say, I don't know what I was thinking, why I thought this was worthy of wasting the pencil on it. So that's just inspiration, always open, and grateful that I'm in a profession that you can do that. Yeah, you can paint any pictures you want at anything you see, or anyone.
What comes first for you?
Oh, yeah, that's a question that is asked sometimes. And sometimes you can answer it one way and sometimes another. So since
I've been through where you can do, I'll try both. Sometimes you'll hear the way a person says something, it had a rhythm to it. For instance, I was in upstate New York. I remember Bill Flanagan was there, and everybody was out poolside, and they was doing this, that, and the other. And he called a friend of mine, Josh, and said, "Everybody smile, click, click." So there's my song. The way he said that, everybody smile, click, click. The way he said that already started a little something, as you can see. So you can start simply with that and just say that twice, see how that feels. And when you get started, it helps you out itself. But in that case, it had a rhythm when I first heard the way they said it. Some things you may see something and you just see what happened. For instance, I was in San Diego, and it was a Sunday and it was quiet, and I was walking to the corner, and we had to stop and wait for a red light. Well, just a couple of people were there, and I stopped and waited for the red light. And there was a couple who was a few feet behind us, and they were coming to the corner, but they stopped a little short because they had to stop and kiss. And they just stopped, and it was just one person there and them back there and me standing here, and they stopped and did one of these sort of Hollywood kisses. And it wasn't brutal, it was just really, really nice. And immediately I turned around from where I was going and went back to the hotel and wrote that song, San Diego. There's so much love in San Diego. And as I looked around the street, I saw everything else where I was, and I noticed how green the greenery was and how fresh the air felt and all that. And I hadn't paid attention to that until I saw that kiss. So I just couldn't go where I was going. I had to go back and get to that. And I went back, and at that one, I wrote the whole song then. Because sometimes I'll write a part of a song and revisit it and throw it in the garbage the next day. But that was the case. And I had heard about this guy with the popcorn person, Fallbacher or someone like that. Who's the man with the popcorn?
Oh, Rickenbacker.
Rickenbacker, that guy. Well, there's a bridge there that has something to do with him and his family. So that magic bridge is because I heard that story sit in that car. That magic bridge, of course, added to the beauty of green, and this all sparked from that kiss. So that's what I mean from inspiration. And I visualize a traveler stopping and laying under that bridge and watching all the boats go by, how pretty things was in green, and everything that went with the song. That's a way.
How do you go about finding a great song? How did you go about
Keep looking.
Keep looking.
Keep looking. We went through 800 songs for Thriller. 800 to get 9. Okay, and then after you get to 9, some great stuff after that, you know. I always use one little device that's never failed me. And then I sit down and be very honest and say, in the company of these 9 songs, what are the 4 weakest? And take those out and put in 4 that are stronger than anything else in the album.
So that was Alan Toussaint and Quincy Jones talking about just how their process works. And I just want to comment on how beautifully said Alan Toussaint, just the way he's talking about how he writes and his inspirations. You can tell he's just a poet. Just in his conversation with Dan, it's all very well spoken.
Absolutely. And I would love to pause and give a little shout out to Madeline Crouch, who is among the 9 people out there who have received the NAMM Oral History Service Award for helping us land some amazing interviews. Madeline is the one who put me together with Alan, so forever I will tip my hat to her. Fantastic opportunity, as you can tell. And I was just mesmerized. I'm mesmerized again listening to it. Just a poetic, as you say, Michelle, warm person, just really, endearing, and somebody you just want to hang out with. What were your thoughts, Wolf?
Well, I love the overall topic of what inspiration is and how he expressed, and of course the beautiful way in which the words were said, but also the idea that it's always a balance between inspiration and craft. And that's the Quincy thing. That's pure craftsmanship. Get your strongest songs, eliminate the weaker ones, then put 4 more really strong songs in. So that's the ultimate in assembly process, which is important to the production of a good record. But with Alan, it was a beautiful sort of generic feeling of how he looked at writing. And it really comes down to experience. And he would talk about how those experiences shaped his songs. It made me think of Paul McCartney writing Yesterday, where he woke up, he didn't know what that melody was. He asked all his friends. He had no title for it. He ended up calling it Scrambled Eggs instead of Yesterday. Scrambled Eggs. Baby, how I love your legs. Apparently that's what he wrote. And he had no idea. He just had the melody and kept asking everybody. It just came out of his experience subliminally. Just woke up hearing it. So that's inspiration.
Incredible. Mike, thoughts listening to those?
Yeah, I mean, like everyone said, listening to Alan is just amazing. And the way he talks and the way he explains things, it's like he explains it in the way that I feel like no one else does, and it makes sense when he says it. It's almost like, wow, I think I could do that. I think I could start looking at ordinary things and take them apart and think about my words a little bit more. Obviously, he's not talking about the fact that he's a songwriting genius, but he really just kind of humanizes it a little bit, which I appreciate.
Well said. Absolutely. Yeah. That's great. So we're going to go on to our next segment.
So I really enjoyed this part because it was blues artists meeting blues artists that they're really excited to meet. We all get starstruck, but it's fun to hear some of the stars and who they were really excited to play with.
So we're going to hear from Quincy Jones about meeting Count Basie and Ray Charles, Robert Cray meeting Muddy Waters, and Arthur Lee Williams talking about Sonny Boy Williams.
I wrote a thing called From the Four Winds when I was 14 or something. It was big suite and everything else, and somebody showed it to Lionel Hampton and Basie too. Basie adopted me when I was 13, So anything, one thing led to another.
Wait, you were already playing music so well at age 13 that Count Basie took note of you?
Oh, yeah. We were playing 5 clubs a night with Ray Charles, because I met Ray Charles, I was 14, and Ray was 17, and we played pop music with white cardigans and bow ties, so 7 till about 10, and we played at Washington Educational Social Club, which is a bottle club, strip teasers and rhythm and blues all that night. Played everything, man. Schottisches, polkas, Big Fat Butterfly. You had to know Big Fat Butterfly because we used to play for the Kitty. You know the Kitty? They have this on a pole and a stand, and they have a big wooden face of a cat, and that's what people used to pay for requests. That's how we got paid, was from the Kitty.
Being that we're here in Sacramento, I had a great opportunity here when Muddy Waters was around, and we got here to the Sacramento Blues Festival, and we had just played 5 shows already with Muddy on this little short tour of 6 shows, and the 6th one was here at the Sacramento Blues Festival, and my good fortune had it that one of his guitar players had to go back to Chicago. And Muddy asked me, he says, Robert, do you think you can play some of that Muddy Waters style blues? And I said, I'll give it my best shot. So I played the whole set with Muddy. Because the previous gigs he just asked me to sing the encore, which was Managed Boy, which is fantastic too. But, I got to sit backstage with him every night, and I was like the reporter asking him, how it was to play with Little Walter and Otis Spann and all that, and I was like, it was great. It was fantastic.
Sonny Boy Williams, Elmo James. I played with him. I played with Ed, I played with Sonny Boy in Helena, Arkansas.
No kidding. What was that like?
Oh man, the King Biscuit time. King Biscuit Flour and Sonny Boy meal. Yes, sir. They had Sonny Boy sitting on the corn cob. Sitting on a big old corn cob with the corn ear, sitting on the grains, and I had a picture with him with the harmonica in his hand. And on down the line, I was in Detroit, Michigan, and he was doing. I was playing at a place called the White House Lounge, and I noticed my crowd was slack that night. So on my intermission, on my break, I walked down there, and there he was. When I walked in, he said, "God damn, look at that. That's my boy. I'm so crazy about his mama." He never met my mother in his life, but he put me to dancing like that. I swear he did. He said, "I'm crazy about his mama." He said, "Come on up here, boy." He said, "I want you to blow it while I sing it." And I did some of the... So please, darling, do me a favor. Keep our business to yourself. Please, darling, do me a favor. Keep our business to yourself. Don't you tell nobody. Don't mention nobody else. You have a husband. I got a wife. If you start some talking, it's going to mess up our life. Please, darling. Keep our business to yourself. If you don't tell nobody, don't tell nobody else.
Arthur Lee Williams.
Oh, yeah.
Fantastic stuff. What a great guy. And all of this talk about meeting your blues heroes, I got to ask Wolf. I'm sure it's a long list, but who first comes to mind?
Well, it would be one of the subjects that we're dealing with today, and that would be B.B. King. As a 16, 15-year-old kid, I would be putting my headphones on, listening to B.B. King albums I bought at Thrifty Drugstore in the cutout bin. And I'd listen to those things like they were textbooks. And when I finally got a chance to play with him, I'd already met him a couple times before that and spent time with him. But to actually play with him was fantastic, and to interact with him was an amazing thing. So it's just like hits a certain point where you do meet your heroes.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Mike, who comes to mind for you?
I've always said that my favorite drummer of all time is John Bonham, so I'll unfortunately never get to meet him or play alongside him. But I have seen his son play in person, and it's close, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely John Bonham, and Keith Moon was up there, and Mitch Mitchell, and all those guys. Not crazy blues. I mean, it's related to the blues, but it's not 100%.
No,
it's close.
They were influenced.
What about you, Dan?
Oh my gosh, that's a very long list. Well, I remember the first time I met BB. It was at the Richmond Auditorium in Richmond, California, which is just north of the Golden Gate Bridge. And there was a concert that Lionel Hampton was doing, and I had a radio show, and I got to go backstage and that sort of thing. But BB and I were in the bathroom in the men's room together at the same time during intermission, and we were standing next to each other. And I just happened to notice there's a large gentleman next to me, and I kind of looked up. And I saw on his collar he had BB in gold, a pin on the collar of his shirt, and that's all I noticed. And I thought, oh my goodness! So I went to wash my hands, and I remember washing them for a very long time before he came over. And I waited for him to wash his hands, and met him, shook his hand, and years later, I was telling the story to my young kids, and my daughter Ella said, "So you pee-peed next to BB, and so it's sort of a family folklore song now. But a fantastic guy. And of course, I got to meet him for the interview. I think I saw him 19 times in concert, if you count the street scenes in San Diego, where there were a multitude of people. But I did listen to him there. I think I saw him 19 times. So definitely, probably the greatest blues guy I'll ever meet as far as that goes. So for sure, BB's on the list.
That was just such a great Dan story. It's like, oh yeah, I met him in the bathroom.
You'll have to see me on the BBPP.
Okay, Michelle, I know you're kind of new to the game, but anybody come to mind?
That's really hard. I will say it's been really nice just being able to go through and listen to all these artists and not just listen to them, but watch them and their style. Because I am new to the game, I have not had the honor of meeting a whole lot of people, but watching the pure joy of what they do and just their love for music is just an amazing experience. And you really find that with almost every blues musician I've even seen, whether it's YouTube or any other method.
Well said. Yeah, absolutely. You know, a factor of the blues as well as jazz, something I'm near and dear to my heart, is just this whole concept of moving the ball forward, you know, this mentoring and passing the torch. And the next segment that we're going to hear kind of talks about all that. And I'd love to get Wolf's thoughts about that too. I mean, it really is a quintessential part of being a musician, I think.
Oh, yeah. It's a responsibility, but it's also a joy. Because when you teach somebody that's really got a passion, you feel the growth in them from week to week. Like my students at UCLA are just into it. They're just super motivated. They want to have careers in music. They're not necessarily saying it's going to be a jazz career, but they understand that jazz is a very important part of their training. So if they become pop artists, they go into hip-hop, whatever it is, they're going to bring that inspiration with them. And so it's so important to the next generation. I believe that you have to, if you're a player who is endowed with the ability to transfer that information, it's a responsibility you have to take pretty seriously to mentor certain students, as many as you can, you know, within reason. But, you know, I was mentored so luckily by Pat Martino and Johnny Smith and a lot of great players who helped me in my career. And Kenny Burrell. So all these people were just very important. So I take that responsibility. I'm part of a conduit.
Absolutely. So, Mike, what are we going to hear in this last segment?
This last segment is, like you said, Dan, all about why music is important and why it's important to pass it on to the younger generation. We're going to hear from B.B. King, Alan Toussaint, and Quincy Jones, all talking about that subject.
I think, though, being interested in the music as I was, that was one of the good things for me, and I think it's a lot. It has a lot to do with a lot of the kids today that keeps them from, you know, when kids have nothing to do that interests them, then they may do many things. And I never got in trouble. I was never in trouble other than getting thrown out of the house for playing so loud. But that was on my mind. I would say to the students today, though, as you asked me a while ago, schooling is very important. All of my life now, I didn't finish high school. All of my life, I wished I had finished high school and gone to college. And I say to all of the kids, you're never too old. I got a computer that tutors me now, but that's the one thing I regret. I regret that more than anything, because I think that today is the day of, shall we say, technology, and you need to know something about what's going on around you. A diabetic like I am, I've got a little machine that I can check my blood sugar and don't have to probe in my fingers like we used to have to. So in so many words, I'm trying to say there are so many things that young people are doing today And a lot of them are musicians. A lot of them are playing and having fun, maybe on the weekends. But I say to them, whether they have fun on the weekends or any other time, play your music. Nothing wrong with it. Play it. It's a good feeling to know that you can play. I have an old saying that I've kept in my mind for a long, long time. It is much better to know and not need than to need and not know. So go ahead and play it.
So what have your thoughts been in terms of inspiring young children who come up to you and say they want to be a musician? What have been some of your thoughts about that?
Well, it doesn't happen to me often, but I know what that means if such would happen. If I thought they really had an ear to hear what I was about to say, I would say to surround yourself with good people and listen to everything you can, no matter if you think it's your bag or not. Just listen, because listening is free. You're going to be alive in the next 5 minutes. You can have this to you now. Add this to your 5 minutes worth of this. Because even in whatever you're doing, a little piece of that may slip right in when you need it, where it never would have met before. For some reason, since you collected that day, those 5 minutes, here is where that little key fit. You could have not had that, and this was going on and be mediocre forever, because it needed that which you got from somewhere else. So surround yourself with good people. And as far as learning, if you're a reader, if somebody's in your field and they're writing articles, read articles that successful people write in that, and not unsuccessful people, thinking I could learn from how to lose so not to. I don't think you should give losing any practice or learn more about how it goes. There's no need in trying to keep learning something unless you want to use it. There's enough learning how to win that you won't have to try to learn about losing, about not to lose. That's playing defense with life. You have to be offensive. Yeah.
Well said, yeah.
Yeah, well, and I think if you can, as much good stuff and people as you can surround yourself with, and love strongly and few. You can't love a whole lot of folk. It would be nice in the general biblical time you can love, but love one or few.
So that would beg to be the opposite of parents who tell their kids, oh, that's great, you're talented at music, but you need to get something else to fall back on in case you
get a real job.
Right?
Get a real job.
But you said that if you're walking into the studio trying to figure out how to sell or do anything else, when you're trying to sell shoes or sell vodka, what you need to do is put all that aside.
Be honest to your main goal, and give it everything that you need to give it, and that means studying your craft. You know, I hear all this BS today about, I used to read music, and I've asked dudes that I used to read music, but I forgot how. But I can read, but not enough to hurt my swinging and all that kind of nonsense. It's nonsense, man. It is, knowing what you're doing. It's wonderful, knowing what you're doing. And I in the beginning, I'd do it whether I got paid or not. I mean, our first movie, The Pawnbroker, I got $8,000, man.
They paid the orchestra, though. They paid the orchestra, though.
They had to. I couldn't afford them. $8,000? No. And I tried to do the whole thing in 2 days. I thought it was like a record deal, No, it's not the way it works. And, as you go, you if you don't make any mistakes, you don't learn anything. I got to be lucky enough to make a lot of mistakes, man. It's true.
Okay, that was Quincy Jones wrapping up our final segment of our podcast today on the blues. Final thoughts. Let's go around. Mike.
Yeah, it's just the blues. It's a great genre. I'm really glad that, Dan, you were able to capture all of these interviews with, some of the most iconic blues players. And Michelle, great job with this outline. It really painted the picture of how these guys got into music, how they were inspired, the writing process, and why it needs to be passed down to future generations. So I had a lot of fun today.
Yeah, me too. I absolutely agree. Great outline. What a joy it is to hang out with my man, Wolf. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Great to be here.
Your final thoughts?
Well, I have to play off of what Quincy just said, and that is to have that total commitment, because I think without it, you don't have the imagination to see what you can do. You've always got a little part of your life that's in another camp, and it may be that part that holds you back. So I remember burning my bridges, like he said. The only job I've had not in music was working in a laundromat for 2 weeks to buy an amp. Other than that, I've been in music, but in so many different things: education, performance, production, video work, tutoring, anything that's musical I did. Film scores, all that stuff. So I completely concur with Quincy.
Fantastic. Michelle?
Just really excited that this was the second podcast that I got to do. I'm a huge blues fan. I'm not very good with names, as you know, but just the music itself, it's very rare that you hear songs that make you really feel something. And in the blues genre, I feel like every song makes you feel something. So happy that this came about.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for listening. It's been a pleasure. And we'll do another one, huh?
Yeah, we'll see.
That would be great.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.